What's up, everyone? Mr. NoobTube Gamer. Today we're playing Battlefield 1 in 2024. 8 years. This game doesn't look or feel like an 8-year-old game to me. It still seems like a game that could come out tomorrow and would still feel like a brand new game that just came out. But it's actually close to a decade since it released, which is nuts. I have noticed over the past couple years the player base has dwindled a little bit. It used to be that Battlefield 1 still had a lot more players than Battlefield 5 on Steam and other platforms because a lot of people hated Battlefield 5. Now people love Battlefield 5 all of a sudden, even though it's still the same game that it was in 2020 when the game got its last content update and people were still hating it back then. So I don't know why the sudden change, why the sudden appreciation for BF5, but I'm going to tell you guys this right now. Battlefield 1 is definitely better than Battlefield 5, hands down. While the gunplay, I would give a slight edge to Battlefield 5, the overall game itself, when we're talking about the weapon design, the map design, and everything in between, Battlefield 1 just does everything better than Battlefield 5. Plus, there's a lot more content to enjoy in this game, especially if you include Premium, but since it's free with Game Pass now, it comes with the Premium Edition. DLC is pretty accessible to almost everybody now. So you can't even say, oh, but it's DLC, so it doesn't count. All the content in Battlefield 5 was free, but Battlefield 5 had no content, you know? But I'm not trying to make this video a Battlefield 1 versus Battlefield 5 video. What I will say is that Battlefield 1 is easily among the best Battlefield games that you can play in 2024. If you're talking about just the overall player count, people are still playing almost every game mode between Conquest, Operations, Team Deathmatch. All the major game modes still have populated servers to this day. Haven't really run into any cheaters to speak of, so that's another good thing. And, you know, it got a lot of shit back in its day from a lot of people, even though it was overall one of the most popular Battlefield games and one of the most beloved Battlefield games of all time. There was still a sizable number of people that were like Battlefield 4 fans, didn't like it going back to the past because the weapon customization obviously is more limited, and then you also had some people who were really like sticklers for it not being accurate in World War One. Well, as true as that may be, because there are a lot of fully auto weapons and stuff that was just never used on the battlefield. At the same time, it's a hell of a lot better and a hell of a lot more tolerable than the shit that they did in Battlefield 5 with the fucking robot arm lady and all the stupid shit they put in that game. At least Battlefield 1 featured a lot of iconic World War 1 battles. Battlefield 5 didn't have any of that. There was no D-Day, there was no nothing. And I feel like, again, I'm kind of regressing back to it being BF1 versus BF5. But it's important to talk about these things because more likely, if you're looking for like a modern military game, then you're either going to go with Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4. If you're looking for one that kind of takes place in the past, then your two choices are Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. You can also pick Battlefield 1942 and Vietnam and a couple other games, the old ones from back in the day, but most people are not going to want to play those. They want to play the more recent ones. Does not get much better than Battlefield 1. Felt like the 1 year that Battlefield actually had a chance at outselling Call of Duty, because remember back in 2016 it was Infinite Warfare and everybody was shitting on that game, talking about how stupid it was. It's like the most disliked trailer in YouTube history at the time, and people were like, oh, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year that Battlefield outsells Call of Duty, and Infinite Warfare still outsold Battlefield 1, in part because of the Modern Warfare Remastered that was included with the deluxe edition. I think that may have had a role to play, but who knows? It's just like Call of Duty is so huge. Battlefield, I don't think Battlefield's ever going to beat COD, honestly. It's been so many years, there's so many times where they clearly had the better game out in a given year. Like Battlefield 3 versus Modern Warfare 3, BF3 was easily a lot better. At least the multiplayer, not necessarily the campaign. But who plays these games for campaign anyway, right? And yeah, the only other year that it seemed close was Battlefield 1 versus Infinite Warfare. And also when it was Call of Duty Vanguard versus Battlefield 2042 in 2021. Everyone was like, oh my god. Remember all the hype that 2042 got? Like, it feels like a lifetime ago considering everything that happened with that game. But everyone was hyping the fuck out of that game. And I even did a poll on my channel asking you guys, which game do you think is going to sell more copies, Battlefield 2042 or Call of Duty Vanguard? And the vast majority of people said Battlefield 2042, which is just like crazy. And, you know, Vanguard wasn't really a good game either, but 2042 was so much worse that it kind of ruined any chances of them really doing anything against COD that year. But Battlefield 1, if you're more of like an infantry guy, then this game may be more enjoyable than 2042, which honestly it's not that hard because that game is dog shit. But even Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, which are definitely considered the greatest battlefields of all time, or at least among them, it's really tough being infantry in those games because there's just so many vehicles, so much stuff going on. You have jets, helicopters, tanks, everything. You have naval vehicles. In Battlefield 1, you don't have tanks, or, well, you have tanks. I mean, you don't have helicopters because they didn't exist back then, and you don't have jets, because those are like the two things that always killed me the most in BF3 and BF4. And since I'm like more of an infantry guy, I kind of enjoy myself a little bit more in Battlefield 1, you know? There's a lot of close quarters, a lot of infantry-based combat, but, you know, if you like playing with your tank, and they also have a blimp that you can fly, which is pretty cool, because they did have blimps back in World War I. So it is, you know, it's different. It was a nice breath of fresh air for the Battlefield series at the time, because if they went with another modern game, I think people would have really not liked it, despite all the people that were hating on World War I setting. It just would have been monotonous if they went back to modern military. I think now it's time for them to get back to modern military, but only because it's been over a decade since the last modern military setting in Battlefield, which was Battlefield 4. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much all to say about Battlefield 1, because I'm kind of going off on tangents. It has a lot of players. The gunplay and the overall gameplay still feels like a modern game despite being close to a decade old, which is just incredible. Just shows the amount of effort and how much the developers pushed the technological boundaries at the time. And I would consider it the last good Battlefield game, because after that we had 5 and 2042, the two worst Battlefields of all time. But let me know in the comments down below, do you still play Battlefield 1 in 2024? And how would you rank it among all of the Battlefield games? Would you consider it one of the top 5? Top 3? I would honestly put it in the top 5, not necessarily top 3, but definitely top 5, for sure. And it's still a great game.